Okay, today we're going to learn, this is the Ceramics 1, 7 decorating techniques, and there's a review quiz online, and this is how you do it. You roll a slab, same thickness as we have done all the other ones, like for your mug, for example. You're going to cut an 8-inch long rectangle by 4 inches high, and then you're going to divide it up into 2 by 2 inch squares, and then in the on the top of each square, you're going to write the following: incising, piercing, carving, applique, pressing, stenciling, and stamping. And then the last box will just be your initials or your letters of your name. Okay? Alright, so incising, which is the first one, incising means to draw in the clay, and you're using whatever tool you'd like. Typically speaking, most people will use a needle tool to draw a small little picture in here. It doesn't have to be something super complicated, but just drawing into the clay. And some people even use like a quill, they'll use a pencil or a pen, but to draw into that clay means to incise. Okay, so there's my little drawing. Okay, next is called piercing, and piercing, you have to think about like when you pierce your ears, you cut all the way through the clay. So you start by just incising a design, something pretty simple. I'm going to just do a heart. It's pretty easy, simple. And a lot of times, if your clay is soft enough, you can just use your needle tool to go all the way through. Or if you have like a utility knife or a blade of some sort, that actually works even better. But if you don't have one of those, just use your needle tool. I actually have a little blade that I'm going to use because my clay is a little bit firm right now. So when your clay gets leather hard, I have these little utility knives that you can borrow, as long as you're really, really careful. And you can pierce out a design. And then you lift that out, and then there's your pierced design. The next one is carving. Now carving gets a little bit confused with piercing because we think of carving pumpkins, but it's the exact opposite. With piercing in clay, it's like carving a pumpkin, as in you carve all the way through. And with carving, you actually take something like a loop tool or a small ribbon tool, something that is just going to chunk out a piece of clay, and you're just going to scoop some clay out to carve in a design of some sort. Okay? And that's carving, is where you're taking clay away by chunking it out. Okay, the next one on this row, the last one on this row, it's called applique. And with applique, it's the definition for it is the attachment of clay coils, clay balls, pinch pots, things like that, decorative, and you're adding it to the surface. So here's a really great example of an applique on bird. Okay, here's an example of an applique coil. And with the trick with applique is that whatever design you do, you put it onto the surface. If your clay is leather hard, you'll have to slip and score, but if it's already soft clay and everything you're using is soft, you can just put it on there, and then you have to knit around the entire edge. So if you look at this applique on piece, you have to knit around everything. And that's a little bit time-consuming and tedious, but it has a really nice effect. So because my clay is leather hard, I'm going to go ahead and I have to slip and score this particular piece on. So I'm just going to take my cutout from the piercing, and I'm going to attach it. And I'm missing my slip bottle. Let's use some. No, I need slip. I don't even see one on this table. Make a slip on the surface. Okay, I'm going to put that on there, and then you'll use your potter's knife to press that in around the entire design so that it actually stays attached. Okay, kind of compress. Okay, so now it's bumping up off the surface. That's applique. Okay, the next one is pressing. Pressing, you typically want this to be soft clay to do this, but it's any random object you can push into the clay is pressing. So it's essentially, it's not a stamp, it's anything but a stamp. So you could find like jewelry, you could go outside and find sticks or branches. Like my students, I have this in some of my class, like pine needles and like seashells you can press in, beads, different things like that. That's a press. Okay? Okay, stenciling is where most of the time when we talk about stenciling, you're using a piece of paper that you've drawn or you've cut out from like a printer, and you're going to trace around that design, and a lot of times you can either fill it with colored slip, for example, or it's just used to create an incised design that's a little bit cleaner. I know some of my students who are not really great at drawing will use this technique, and it's just essentially drawing around something, typically a piece of paper that's been drawn on. So there is my stencil. It looks like a gear. Okay, stamping. Stamping also has to be done in soft clay, so this may or may not work. But we've done stamping since the very beginning of the semester because the students had to create their personal stamp. But if you don't have a personal stamp or any kind of actual physical stamp, is the difference between stamping and pressing. And then when you're done, you turn that in and you'll get your 4 points.